Okay, everybody, hello, and this is, I forget what the name of this program is every time I start it. This is Discovering Autism, and I have two guests I'm going to do at the same time here, and this is Martin Silvertant. He's got his bachelor's in design, and I've got Dr. Natalie Engelbrecht, who has a whole alphabet soup behind her name. She's got a bachelor's of arts. She has got an MSc, which is a master's in counseling.
I've got a bachelor's in art psychology and then a master's in science, applied psychology.
Science.
Registered psychotherapist and naturopathic doctor.
Oh, cool. And I also remember reading something about, you're also into naturopathy, correct?
Yeah, I'm a naturopathic doctor as well.
Oh, cool. I've got someone I'd like you to meet. I'm going to talk to you about her afterwards, but she's in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, and that is her big-time specialty. I don't know if you might even know her. Have you ever heard of Carol Bird?
I have heard of her.
Okay.
I don't think I know her.
Okay, well I will introduce you to. But anyway, so we are here. Actually, both Martin and Natalie are late diagnosed and on the spectrum. And that's where we're going to begin this. And that is, welcome to the club of being late diagnosed, right?
Yay.
Wow.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
How about you, Martin? What kind of how long ago was this for you, Martin?
I was diagnosed at 25.
Okay.
And you're 29 now?
Okay.
No, you could have been 5 you were diagnosed?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know it was only 4 years ago. Okay. Well, there I learned something new.
So 4 years, and Natalie, you were about 2, correct?
2, that's correct.
Okay, and I'm only 1, so that sounds like one of these riddles that you put up on the on Facebook. If one person was 4 years, the other person was 2 years, one was 1, and they all had tacos for lunch. Okay, you have to. Natalie has put like 10 different riddles up the last 24 hours, and people are just going crazy, scratching their heads, trying to figure these out.
Yeah, you've done well, but you've gotten a bunch of them to the point I was like, are you Googling?
Am I what? Oh, no, I know I wasn't. I know.
It's like there's a few of you that are so fast, I can't get them up fast enough. Like, it's not fair.
Well, some of it's just literally, it's like, for some reason the answer's there. I mean, and there's some
that's the way our brains work, right? That's one thing that's pretty cool about our brain, and not having that group together. It's been really neat to see that.
Yeah, it is. Who wants, let's see, I'm trying to think of a good starting question.
But I think that maybe Martin can start off by talking about how you figured out that you were autistic, and then, because that leads to me, like, he's the person that actually...
Cool.
I can give you the story, then why we thought I was. You pointed it out, and I thought that was funny, but I think the story really starts with you.
Okay. Yes, go, Martin.
So, I suppose in my teenage years, I started feeling like I was different than others, so I started exploring options. I think when I was 19, I came across a list of symptoms for Asperger's syndrome, and it described me exactly, like the whole page, and I was astounded that finally I found something that described me so accurately.
Yeah.
And yet it took another 6 years before I finally got diagnosed, which I don't know that I know why it took so long. I was on my personal journey of exploration, I guess, and like 4 years later, I stepped into the diagnostic process, and I got a diagnosis, which was a huge relief because, during the diagnostic process, the psychologist suggested to me maybe I had ADHD as well, and that almost felt like it was going to rob me of this identity, it fit me so perfectly. And so now I got diagnosed and eventually met Natalie, and I saw some of the same kind of symptoms in there. And so I suggested maybe she might be autistic as well.
Yeah, we met actually because Martin was writing on Core, and I'd written an answer, and then he asked questions that I felt were like really valid and challenging some of the things that I stated. So I had an immediate respect for that and wanted to talk to him. And so we started chatting, and I remember asking somebody, because I knew that he was Asperger's or autistic, and so I asked somebody, how do I talk to somebody like that? Because which is really nuts, because I treat people with autism, and yet, I just had no idea, like, well, how do you talk to an autistic person, And so they, I don't even really remember what the advice was, but, I started talking to Martin, and I guess one of the clues was that I went out and bought 6 books on autism that day, and you were like, even my parents don't have that many books. I was like, this is normal, right?
I mean, it's a benefit, especially, I could say.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing that you thought was kind of quirky is that, as soon as I meet you, I give you a contract, right?
Right, the social contract.
A social contract of these.
Here are the social rules.
Here are the social rules.
You
accept it, and you said I was weird. You thought it was like strange, like I don't even know you. Why do I get this contract?
I've never been to one with a social contract.
Yeah. But for me, it was just that I found that interacting with people just would go wrong without me sort of presenting a set of rules. And the rules, in a sense, were largely to protect myself, because I can't have, one of the things is, like, we have a high tendency towards guilt, and it's hard to kind of hold on to things as well, because there's such an ability to understand people are all different and things like that. So, so I just found that the social contract was basically designed to, if you do these things, we aren't going to talk anymore, right? So this is kind of funny when you've never even talked to me. Well, so then that's when you suggested maybe I had autism, which I absolutely laughed at. I said, there's no chance. But, and then I just thought he was being ridiculous. But, at the same time, I mean, it just speaks so much to it, because I was in London at the time, and I was taking photographs, and I thought, I don't know what I thought autism was, but, Martin was sending me beautiful photographs of the Netherlands, and I thought he must want a photograph of, like, there'd be a beautiful arch there, and I would take a picture of one tiny piece of it, because I thought, well, that must be how he works. And, and he's not going to
focus on details, so giving some ways and then details of everything around me.
Yeah, just like, so it was like, and I felt like such an idiot when I figured, like...
But honestly, I do find those things interesting.
Oh, good.
Like, see the texture, and I really enjoy those details.
So, like, once I figured out I was autistic, then I was really embarrassed, because I was like, oh my gosh, right? Because I thought that they were sort of, I thought you functioned differently than myself, and then, of course, I find out we were so happy, because my diagnosis came much quicker. I immediately went to see somebody and got diagnosed within, I don't know, a few weeks, and we were the first person I told, and our reaction was yay. The interesting thing was, when I met Martin, as we started reading his writing on Cora on autism, it was absolutely depressing, and it just was so confusing to me, because here was this, like, really upbeat, cheerful, funny person, and the way that they were viewing autism was just not like the way I saw it. I thought, well, this is fantastic. It's like, I suddenly understood a lot of things about myself, why my parents had been called into school 3 times growing up, for me being too well behaved, or my only one of color was purple pencil, and I knew to color this on yellow, but I was like, I have to color it purple, because I liked color purple, and so my parents were called in because they were worried about that, and things like this. And again, suddenly, just a lot of things, like the fact that I was reading a book a day, and my secretary would say that, and people would make these suggestions of, you need to go out more, you should have more fun, and I didn't understand. I'm like, well, this is fun for me.
Yeah.
Right? So it, for me, meeting Martin was like a huge relief, because it was suddenly somewhere I could just be myself, in terms of, and all those things that I didn't understand, all the masking and things, all the things that it led to, I got diagnosed because I really had to come to a point of a breakdown when I met you. And they didn't know what I had, so I was sent to a therapist by my doctor to try and figure out what I had, but it was actually Martin who figured it out, because I didn't fit anything. Was I that? Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I also had a breakdown of sorts, which led me to the diagnostic process. I mean, there has to be a sort of urgency to requiring a diagnosis, because that is then you can take the next step to getting certain help.
Yeah, and I was so concerned, about the diagnosis when I got it, in terms of, was this really real? Did I really have autism? Because I was shocked, and of course, I had to go and get a second diagnosis, because one wasn't enough, and that was the main concern. And it's been, just really, it's been going backwards in time now, making sense of things, but it's just a lot of things popped up. Once we got the diagnosis, we were able to paint the colors that were not overstimulating, and all things like that, which we were pretty pedantic about, because Martin's office is a very lovely blue, like a dark kind of blue, like a night sky, and we tried 11 paints just before we did that, right? And eventually we started realizing we could get samples, because we kept each room, we had to find what didn't stimulate us when we walked in, but that we began to be able to control, once we understood who we were. Yeah.
Wow, that's it's very common. I mean, it happened to me too. That whole idea of I heard about Asperger's probably about 4 years. Well, I've heard of it before, but I was talking, a coworker was talking about her son, and for some reason it all was connecting. I was like, but his traits were so much more, I don't know if you use the word severe or challenging, and I just thought, no, I'm not like that. So I dismissed it.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me, and really it's going back then and re-looking at the diagnostic criteria and understanding it. I mean, I saw a post today where they were talking, I saw it on I don't know, it's an article from somewhere, just talking about the 11 signs of female autistic and how you might miss them because of it. And I was looking at it, I'm like, you're going to miss it even from this, because, they just we don't look like it in terms of, I didn't understand what social differences really meant. I mean, it's just defined so poorly that I think without really having these kind of conversations with people that are actually on the spectrum, it's very hard to actually understand, what does repetitive mean? And I would have said, I don't know. I would have called myself repetitive, and yet I had the same breakfast for 7 years, right? Or I would eat the same food, and there would be strange combinations, and I'd eat it for a year. Or things like, my need to read all the time, and do research all the time, those kind of things. Or, of course, one of the big fallacies, of course, is the empathy piece, right? And that, this is what they say, we have no empathy, but it's really the complete opposite problem. We have way too much, and so, I found it difficult to read fiction books. When I was younger, I did, because as females, we learn about how to socialize through reading these books. But I really didn't like. I get too upset, So it would be funny. I'd go to a bookstore and say, "Okay, I want a book that's really well written, where nothing bad happens to anybody, and it's on like this, but it has to be moving me." And of course, most books have that. They're based on some sort of a tragedy, right? And that's what the protagonist comes out of. And so I would just, it was really tough to find a book that I didn't get upset with.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so research worked a lot better. And I can't look at things like, the news I can't tolerate. And even yesterday, you were looking at we talked about this fish, and then the guy started killing it on camera, and I just said, no, I can't take a look.
Yeah.
But because I won't be able to get those images out of my mind. Like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a couple of years ago reading an answer that Martin had uploaded, and there was a tragic image in it, and that goes through my head over and over. You know, so these are the kind of things that make it hard for people to really know who we are in terms of. And the other thing is that because our empathy is alternating, it can really come off as a lack of empathy. Like, in some ways, we're pragmatic about our empathy. I mean, I remember a good friend of mine, her mom died, but her mom had been so incredibly abusive to her that when her mom died, I had gone over there and she told me her mom died, and I said, okay, and then I changed the subject. And anyway, because a couple of years later, she told me how hurt she was over that, but I just thought, well, you know, the woman abused you, she's dead, that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to sort of mask those things. It's like, you know, it seems that, I don't know, there's sort of logic to the empathy in terms of...
Well, yeah, I find it interesting because I often feel like empathy is sort of projection. Like you project your own emotions onto the other person and think that these are the emotions the other person experiences, but that is not necessarily the case.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes because, for example, one thing is people tend to like hanging out with me, which is problematic for me because, you know, I have to say no to them, and I start feeling hysterical inside because they ask me and I feel guilty, and it goes on, and then I just sort of disappear from people. But there's always this level of feeling like they must be so upset, and I think that's what we were talking about. It's just kind of the feedback loop, right? And you want to talk a little bit about that because we talked about how it seems to be that we project and then we feel worse because we do more and more. Because one of the things that we find is we do way too much for other people.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So we do a lot for a person, thinking that it's going to strengthen the relationship, or you might get something back for it. And then, in my experience, anyway, you usually don't. But you give a lot more to others than you get back, which makes you feel bad. It makes you feel guilty, which kind of motivates you to do the same thing over and over again, because you need something to make yourself feel better. So you start giving to other people again, and so enter this vicious cycle, really.
Yeah.
But also, I think beyond about, I don't think it's so much about getting something back. It's like we tend to feel bad. Like
no, but you hope the relationship is true, that there is something, and then you find out that no, this was a casual interaction, and they just try to get something from you. Or
yeah, and I think that's where we misread the clues. Like on the cues, like what happens is we end up going way above and beyond. Like we'll know somebody for, you know, a couple of weeks, and then it's astounding, like what we're doing for them, buying them birthday presents, like you know, having them over regularly, like you know, feeding them, doing everything when they're suffering, and to the point of actually having meltdowns ourselves. And it just doesn't seem like we have, because we start feeling like we feel like, well, I feel so badly for the person, and then this is where we really miss the cue in terms of it, because suddenly the person just disappears, like they got what they needed and they leave. I guess that's the thing I like about the Facebook group, for example, that was created, is it feels like a much safer environment to me. Like we're all on the same page. Like, you know, and the Facebook group I find really quite astounding in terms of just, we were talking about that, it seems to be like, you know, sharing of, hey, look, I made pancakes, or I'm having a tough time with dating, or, you know, my obsession with riddles as of right now. You know, it seems to be this sort of space where we just are ourselves, and nobody seems to, well, they don't have a bad reaction to that.
Right.
Yeah. And they say we're socially impaired, but you definitely see that there's a need to connect as well. Yeah. Even though, of course, we need our alone time to kind of unwind.
But I wonder about what social impairment means, because when I look at, like, the, you know, Embrace ASD Facebook group, I don't see any social impairments, do you?
Well, we talk about facts and logic puzzles, like there's not much chit-chat, there's not a lot of social conventions, so it's easy. it's not as easy in the neurotypical world, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess, because nobody requires that on there. I find that even when in messaging and things, it's just direct, and so it's a relief because none of the things that I don't have to worry about what we do and don't need to say. And I think that's the camouflaging and masking thing that we're always getting in trouble for, right? No, well, not the masking, but when we mask these things because of what do we need to say, etc. But I just find that around because it makes me think about how they say that like we have theory of mind, but I don't see us having any theory of mind issues with each other.
Say that last part about the theory of mind, Natalie. I missed it.
That we're told by researchers that of course we have this theory of mind issue.
Gotcha.
And but we don't seem to have that amongst each other. I mean, Baron Cohen and his comment that what is it, skin suits or something like that? What was the comment?
Supposedly we see other people as bags of skin.
With their mouths, draped in cloth, opening and closing, making noises. And I thought, are you kidding me? Like, it's so offensive. Right? And then I try to understand, like, how do they see us like that? But yet, it's hard to get to know an Aspie unless they let you know them. I mean, it's not like you were easy to get to know when I first met you, because I remember actually Martin really quite irritated me. He was blunt. No, he was. He was like quite annoying in terms of he would just kind of say he was kind, but it was also like in terms of, well, I don't know how I'm going to fit you into my life. I was like, that's nice, and it was like maybe it was about something like you could do Friday for an hour, right?
Setting a schedule.
Yeah, it was like how is that going to fit into your life? But also you when I would ask you something, you would not really answer. Well, you would answer the question, but it would just be directly because you don't get the whole sort of flow of conversation that we have. I wonder if that's because you remember, was it because you were wondering you did think I was neurotypical for a short while, I was wondering. Because I said to Martin, I would like to private message you, because the reason being was that Martin was giving too much personal information, I felt, in comments on Quora, so I immediately began to get concerned for him. I guess being a therapist, that's always at the back of my mind. So I said, can I PM you? And he goes, why? I was like, oh my God. Right, and that it really just meant why, and that's one thing I find about it.
Yeah, I really just wanted to know
why.
Purpose is there
That's from a neurotypical why.
That's
but for that comes off as really sarcastic and rude, right? Like, why? What do you like? Yeah, it's very different things. So that's one thing I find about, again, when I'm hanging out with a group of Aspies is questions are just questions. I don't have to wonder if there's some neurotypical tone or something underlying thing.
My mind is racing 1,000. One, it's great to talk to you both, because I'm just feeling the same. What the topic is about how people who are on the spectrum just kind of fit. And it just, I just feel myself kind of relaxing, just listening to you guys talk about all this. And, but there's also something I noticed, Natalie, see if I did pick this up, and that is when you still think you're neurotypical, you have that perspective, and you're masking, and you're trying to project that and live that. And I'm finding it was very contrary, of course, to who I am. And and that's the change I'm in right now. And I remember I made a note on Facebook, and you said, I found that strange that you say it's bittersweet. And that's kind of the bittersweet for me is well, I won't get into me, but it's just that it's that.
That's relevant, and I'd like to know more about that.
Oh, you mean it's okay to talk about? You don't mind?
No, I would like that.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, okay, for me, I think I had, or probably still do, I had a very low self-esteem because of, and I always thought it was because of my father, who was, I actually think could have very possibly been on the spectrum too, but there was a side to him that was just cruel. I mean, And so I always thought all my life that my weirdness was because of that. And so I've been sort of the meek, the puppy that, that pees when you come into the room, and you shake and, I mean, that's, and so I'm going through this whole process in my own head of the false me that I kept trying to project, and at some level knew it was false. And then so it's just this whole transition into saying, okay, it's feeling comfortable being me for once. It's accepting the real limitations. I mean, I'm sorry, my mind will go a million different directions at once here, and it may not make any sense. But just last week, I was at a autism event. It was actually held by the National Autism Society, or the Autism Society local. And my friend's wife was there with their son who's autistic. And she's been teaching for like 25, 30 years, and with a lot of her students were also autistic. Well, I met her and she goes, "Hey, John told me that you got diagnosed." I said, yeah. And she said, "I've known that for a long time." And I just looked at her and I think I actually said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" I mean, but it was just, so it made me realize just how, I hate to say it, but how much I've been fooling myself or lying to myself. And that's what's hard for me. That's what's been bittersweet for me.
I think potentially for me, I've been trying to figure out why it's just been joy, but you have to remember, I come into this learning from Martin, and we, are a part, like we're a team and we're a partner. So for me, all the loneliness, I just had felt so lonely my whole life. I used to try to explain, and I remember even talking to a therapist and doctors about it, that, I said, loneliness that's undescribable, alone in my family, alone in the world, alone, just alone. And suddenly I met this person that I really connected with. And the interesting thing is that, for both of us, feeling unhappy and things really dissipated by that. So I wonder what it would have been like, but I don't think I would have ever found out if I hadn't met you. I don't know how I would have, because, people truly get shocked with me. I don't get the same reaction as you. I get, "No, you're not," or, they're just truly shocked. People I get the, "You don't seem autistic," and things like this. And so I'm very open about the fact that I have autism, because I need people to understand that, this is what we look like.
Yeah.
I told my when I was 19, they all laughed at me, and they didn't take it quite seriously.
Yeah,
which is kind of understandable, because back then anyway, mostly it was classical autism that was being talked about in the public. So people had this perception of autism as this sort of Rain Man kind of figure, or maybe even less functional than that, perpetually stimming in a corner. Obviously, a lot of, Asperger's syndrome is inherently, they're of higher IQ, so they do function better on average. They have better coping mechanisms anyway, so they can stay overlooked well.
Yeah, they find that, I was just reading in the article there, that the problem is that when we've got, average or above average IQ, we're so good at masking, and we mask to the point that we have an identity crisis. And I think that's what you're talking about, Thomas, because a lot of people go through an identity crisis in terms of, and I don't know why, the thing for me is because I had broken down, I became so totally suicidal that really was the focus for me, was trying to figure out how to get over that. So I don't know that I had any kind of, I don't know about personal crisis or anything like that. But, my kids certainly said, well, that they, when I asked them if they were surprised, they weren't so surprised. They said, well, we knew there was something about you that was different, right? And because I would have meltdowns. I didn't know they were meltdowns. But over, talking about our sensitivity, I had a couple, I used to meditate a lot, and had a couple of Buddhas in the house, and one of my kids just made a joke and said, what was it? I thought Buddhas were one with yeah, well, one with everything, not had one of everything. And of course, I took this so literally, and I got so hysterical that I threw out 30 big black garbage bags of my stuff. You know, had a fire in the backyard of other stuff, and you know, this is sort of this is the reaction to what was a joke, right? And these are the things that we began to see and go, oh, that's different.
Like a colleague at work told me that I must not be very autistic.
Yeah.
He had a nephew that was severely autistic, and what the colleagues of course don't notice is that I have the meltdowns at home, right?
Right. Well, even our friends said, oh yeah, Martin doesn't seem autistic at all. I would know. It's like it's a good thing, right? Like it's like you guys should feel really happy that you don't come across as autistic. Like it's and that's where it gets so weird sometimes, right? Because we're identifying with this, and
well, I suppose it's a good thing that we're socially professional now, but it takes a lot more effort to do so for us.
yeah,
And you don't seem to get a lot of dopamine from it either, so
no.
it's the point of exercise.
So the tension is in the group. Well, how do you find the Facebook group? Because I find like I do get a lot of dopamine there. Like I really enjoy it.
It's different because there's a lot of good problems, a lot of insights, a lot of
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
not a lot of small.
No, there's no small talk. We don't do it. Like, you know, and it's funny because like somebody's on the spectrum and they'll just say to me, "Can I join?" I'm like, "Okay." You know, and that's it. It's not. There's no sort of the way a neurotypical would try to be smooth and you're so wonderful and da 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 da, and then ask. It's just blunt. I mean, what do you find about the group, Thomas? What do you find that you like about interacting with other people on the spectrum?
Well, I don't know. Oh boy, I don't know if I want to put it this way, but I was like really in a low spot in my life when all this happened to me, and I think it was all part of why I started searching for some other answer. And I don't want to. I mean, I guess best just to. I've had a couple attempted suicides in my life, and I have been there. You know, I really think looking back, they were in a sense a call for help, which is like it's that call to nowhere because you can't even describe what's going on. But anyway, I look back and I think if I really wanted to do it, I would have done it. You know, but I've been there in that state. And
I don't know.
Sure.
See that, you know, but it's like I don't know how valid that is because the stats are horrible. It's about 70% of us on the spectrum are suicidal, 50% attempt, and 10% succeed. It's horrifying.
Yes, I know.
Like suicide is the number one reason we die.
I know.
But in my experience, it's not necessarily that there's a strong will not to live. Rather, it's just that life itself can sometimes become too much of a burden, and you don't really see a way out. No organization or no people close by are really helping you.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it seems to, well, the other thing is that, you know, I don't think, I can't say this unilaterally, but everybody that I've spoken to on the spectrum has a past history of, like, abuse. And we all seem to, I don't know how that contributes to our, but I think it makes us feel really unhappy because we obsess about it. And
PTSD is very prevalent.
yeah, we've got massive rage because they're finding, what was this number? It was something like 96% of us have PTSD, but the thing is the PTSD looks different. It's an anxiety-based PTSD rather than the other type. And so, you know, most of us have got alexithymia, which is that inability to know what we're feeling. And, you know, because when I was thinking about the stimming and stuff like that, quite often the only way I know I'm anxious is my son will say, oh, you're stimming. And I'm like, then I have to put it together of like, oh, yeah, that means I'm anxious, right?
Yeah. This is.
And the alexithymia comes from the PTSD is one of the things. But because we know that the interesting thing about autism is the less alexithymic you are, the less negative symptoms you have, the kryptonite. So, you know, the kryptonites are really exaggerated by by that. And so it's something that's really important for all of us to do is to work on our alexithymia. And you and I do that all the time. I'm always asking you how you're feeling. And Thomas, sorry I interrupted you there because you were just talking about the suicidality. I mean, I think all of us have either attempted or, gotten really close. Well, Martin actually called the police from the Netherlands because I was in the process of wanting to kill myself, right? And the police showed up here with social workers and stuff because it's brutal. It was brutal.
Mm. But this is just touching home here because that's another, when you're talking about sort of the bittersweet part of it too, is this. I still feel like I'm going through this alone in a lot of ways. I'm gleaning here and there bits and pieces of things it helped me. But as far as, and just what you were talking about alexithymia and PTSD, Carol Berta was saying, Tom, I think you have alexithymia. And she brought up a few points. I've been looking at it. And ever since all this started for me, I know I have said, I feel emotionally constipated. I feel like I'm, I don't know how to answer questions. And yet I'm empathetic and I can relate and I can talk with people about their feelings, but it's like my own, and it's piecing that all together. It's just this mush, and it's trying to figure all this stuff out. It's just, and I also want to state, this has been a blessing to me, Natalie. And I don't ever mention it. I don't want to come across as, oh my gosh, I wish this hadn't happened. No, not at all. I looked for this all of my life. I wanted this all my life. And it's just that it's, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've heard that a number of people have to grieve, and it sounds like that's what you're going through. And it's really fascinating to hear what you're going through for me, because I didn't grieve. Like, I didn't grieve being diagnosed. I've just been happy since then. But so it's really helpful for me to hear that, because that was one of my questions that I've had recently was, why do some people grieve? And so one of the things is kind of the loneliness of it. Is that right, Thomas?
Is the loneliness, you say?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand where the grieving's coming from, because you're definitely going through a grief period, and I didn't. So it's helpful for me to understand that, because it's quite common. What you're experiencing is much more common than what I did.
My immediate response is loneliness. It's an emptiness. It's feeling so disconnected, and so how can you have self-worth, and how can you have any of that? And I'll have to think about it more, but I guess I know that when this hit me, I told Carol about this. I started having this sobbing cry that could hit me and that fast, and I could be there for 10 seconds. I could be there for 2 hours. And it's gotten a lot less.
I've done 6. My kids forgot to buy me a birthday present one year. I cried for 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
I
wow, this is just.
Yeah, that can be very intense, very long. Like, that's one of definitely the things about it is, and it sounds like Martin does much shorter. Like, if he cries or gets upset, it's very quick and over.
Uh-huh.
Whereas mine's very intense and long. Like, my meltdowns go on hours.
For many years, I just bottled up all my emotions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, a couple times per year, I would take some MDMA, and that would be a way to kind of unwind, release all the emotions, get it over it, and then I would be fine for a while. And with that, I would cry maybe twice per year. I find in recent years, it's really quite helpful to be able to cry more often, to just get it out and go on with your life, really.
What was the thing? It was like something like the average female cries 36 times in a year, and you managed that in a week or something.
Yeah.
So.
I also think that for some of these people, they really lament the fact that they didn't discover this earlier, or someone hasn't told it earlier, and they could have done something about their dysfunctional state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Start making progress from there.
didn't feel like that. I mean, part of it is that I've always been in therapy since I'm 5, and I've always been exploring this, and I find it, for me, it's like I'm fascinated with why am I, these things about myself and about people. So again, and I'm really grateful that, sorry, this is off my head. I'm really grateful that I didn't know, actually, because I think I may have used some of those things to avoid certain things. And I got to be married and have children with somebody that has been amazing to raise kids with, and we're still very close friends.
Yeah.
And I get to do this part of my life like this. But I don't know. It's all, for me, I don't think it could have worked out better. I wouldn't want it different. I wouldn't have wanted to know before. You were going to say something?
Well, I'm just wondering if therapy maybe becomes a factor in us feeling. I've taken a longer journey in therapy, so this was sort of the solution I've been looking for all along, in a sense. So there's no grief around that. It's just being really content that finally I'm diagnosed, and now I can look for what to do next.
Yeah, and I think it matters that you found a partner, that you are, there's a lot of things, right? You're living the autistic dream.
It is such a blessing too that I had a chance to go visit Carol in Saskatchewan for almost a week. We just hung out together, and it was it was almost magical. I'm still processing why it meant what it meant, and I think a big part of it was that for the first time probably I ever felt I could be myself. And there's something about just having a person that understands you, and it's beyond words, it's beyond reason. It's just that that they're your type, your family or whatever, and you two have that, and so that you can. It's almost like you're home. You're really home. I'm almost home.
Yeah, and this is what I was asking about in terms of. I've been surprised, for example, with how the Facebook group and how everybody's connecting there, and I think it helps us all feel more connected.
Yes.
There's a space. That's what I was saying. What's your experience been with that? Because you've just come into the group recently, and what's that been like to be amongst other people like yourself and connecting in that way?
Yeah, I didn't really finish that thought once I went off on the suicide tangent, but I don't know. I know that not only did I find myself, but I found my family, and those were the two things I really needed. And without the internet, I would still be isolated.
Yeah.
I don't know where that would have led, and I don't mean to put it in that terms, but yeah. And so I'm thank God every day I get on, and I look forward to it. That's my life. It's like I have my NT life, which was the old stuff where I went to work to, and now I've got this other life where it's like, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to build. This is what I want to do. That's what I do with the rest of it. Yep.
Yeah, and then because the research shows that, it's funny that for those of us that are in autistic that are in these Facebook groups, when you kind of find your group, and I feel like this group is it's just perfect. I just really I like how it functions. I like how it interacts. That they find that you're just happier. We are those of us on the spectrum who find a way to connect with other people, and they found that interestingly, Twitter didn't make us happier, but Facebook does. On Twitter, I can understand.
And that is also what the research indicates, that Twitter doesn't really help you because it's kind of a singular operation in the sense that you send a very, very short thing out to others, and there's not really an opportunity for a big discussion there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take it away.
You're very constrained in how you can express yourself.
I think Twitter.
I think it's very important for us.
A little bit more maybe narcissistic, right, in terms of this is what I'm doing, or I don't mean it in a diagnostic way, but it's more just kind of, it's less interactive. There's less connection with the community, and you're still in a way, I found Twitter just made me still feel completely alone.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I haven't used, I actually just joined Twitter. Somebody suggested it, and I stick with Facebook because of what just you said. There's that a more natural interaction going on.
And the thing about Facebook is, like, I found that, like, I don't actually, like, have a profile that I use. Like, I use Facebook just for that group. That's it. Like, that's my only thing I do on Facebook because, again, we see on Facebook, like, in the non-autistics, we do see more kind of, social posts. You talk about those, right? Because you've seen more of them, the kind of things that people post.
Oh, yeah, posting a dinner, whatever.
Right.
Everything is on display.
Right.
For enterprise.
Yeah.
No, I just there's sort of a pregnant pause here. Next.
No, it's a pause. It's just in terms of just taking a moment to think about if there's what else would you like to know about or talk about?
Wow. It's not a problem what to talk about. It's probably what not to talk about. I mean, as far as I'm still, even it's been a year, but I feel like it's instead of me solving all these problems or answering all these questions, I have 10 times more questions. Which is good.
Yeah.
It's good. I love it. But so it's I don't know. I say I'm still. I think this when I told you about my friend there at the event that his wife, when she finally said, "Yeah, I've known for a long time," for some reason that was sort of an affirmation or a confirmation that, because I was still at points I was like, "Come on, maybe you're wrong. Maybe this isn't what it is. Maybe it's something else." I kept doubting it, but I've had people. Well, again, I'm talking about Carol because we talk a lot. But she said you are so autistic, and I just laugh because she sees the things that I still don't, and so we laugh about that quite a bit.
I don't even. And that's quite interesting because I still can feel like an imposter at times. I think to myself, maybe I'm not autistic, right? It's like Martin assures me I am, but and logically, if you look at my symptoms, of course I am. But it's just I don't know why. I find I have the same kind of experience as you, and I don't think you have that, right? Martin?
Well,
you ever have down? I certainly.
Generally, no, but sometimes when I've been really dysregulated after meltdown, I sometimes wonder, am I a narcissist? How else can I be so dysregulated and irrational? And from my perspective, well, it's horrible, really. I mean, there's so much distance between who I am during a meltdown and who I am generally.
Oh, God, yeah.
See, I've never had...
It's irrational during a meltdown. It's only afterwards that I reflect and think, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really crazy. You're just going to get hooked on something. But so do I. That's what happens in the meltdown. I get hooked on an idea, or you get hooked on an idea, and it's impossible to...
It kind of loops.
It loops. It loops. That's definitely what a meltdown is for me. Like loops over and over until it stops.
I don't think I've ever, I mean, from what I understand of a meltdown, of course, everything seems to be very individualized as far as what traits are and how they're expressed. But I don't think I've ever had a meltdown. I've had some weird things happen, but not what I've heard of as the classic meltdown. And I think that was one of the things that kept me thinking is like, no, I don't know then if I fit into the real,
I have videos of other people's meltdowns.
And I'm like, holy crap!
They become catatonic afterwards. And
I'm like, they must be faking it, man. That can't be real.
No, it's just a really diverse experience.
And it is. It's like I have to figure out that was called a meltdown because, again, I'm not headbanging. I don't rock. I don't do any of those things. I simply...
And then there's
I cry.
Meltdown or shutdown.
Like, I just cry a lot, right? I cry and I sort of repeat sort of things over and over. I get kind of dark.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And again, like if you you know, if you want to talk about, like, because again, I don't think meltdowns look at, like, I think with Martin, most people wouldn't recognize it as a meltdown. You just get, like, you'll feel upset about something and you just express it, and that's the meltdown. But I know that you're really dysregulated, so I mean,
yeah, it's just a really agitated state.
Yeah.
But also more prone to be loud.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. You may just not know what your meltdowns look like.
You're talking about me?
Meltdowns. You Thomas, because meltdowns could just be crying. That could be a meltdown.
Okay. Well, then if that's sort of the flexibility it has in that definition, then I would say yeah, I do then, because I tend to shut down. I tend to almost I won't go. I mean, I'll just get so emotional that I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know what to say. I don't know what That's that kind of a state that I'm in, so that's interesting.
There's something about our personalities. We'll have to find it. It was interesting in terms of certain personalities do meltdowns and other personalities do shutdowns. And yeah, so I mean, I have had a shutdown, and we all can have both, where you just suddenly are exhausted.
I tend to have shutdowns after meltdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes
Whereas,
sense.
like, I had a meltdown last night, but I feel don't.
Well,
but it's like, but then I was like, well, today I said, wow, I feel very cheerful today, and because it sort of builds up inside of me, and then I have to pump it.
Well,
we found that I had a lot of meltdowns on Fridays because I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and every Friday was a meltdown. You know.
It also seems when we still have a routine to adhere to, then we're less likely to have meltdowns, or maybe, because we just have to accept it and keep going, right? There's usually no time for meltdown when you have to work the next day.
But also the other thing is, like, we found that depends on the eating and stuff like that. The days when I'm not working, we don't eat as much. Our blood sugar goes off. That's very related to meltdowns and shutdowns.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is great to hear this. I mean, this helps me out a lot to realize, because if you're having all these feelings and you say, well, if they aren't related, if they aren't a trait of autism, then what's going on? But if it helps to be able to go, okay, so this is part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we really have to talk with each other. And the problem I have with neurotypical researchers is we won't really talk to people. We'll sit there and answer their question, and whereas, like, we're more liable to just engage in a discussion amongst each other.
Yeah.
What I find interesting, by the way, I recently asked the question whether other autistic people are more prone to get dysregulated due to external or internal stimuli. So external is, light, noise, whatever. Internal, not eating would be one of those signs. And it's interesting that those who have alexithymia don't tend to really feel well when they're hungry. And so their blood sugar drops. And then it can often be too late. They can get a meltdown, not know what the trigger was. Maybe they do know what the trigger was, but it was certainly exacerbated by their bodily state of they just need to eat, and then they would cope much better with whatever they're confronted with.
Well, we've talked about that, and we talked about putting alarms on. We've done lousy again today. You have meltdown Friday, and it's like, what's the day, Saturday? Yeah, Saturday, yeah, it was. My meltdown was on Friday again. Oh my gosh.
Like clockwork.
Oh, every Friday. Meltdown.
Well, it's funny. I'm going through my head. I, in a sense, I'm redefining all these things now again as we're talking about what a meltdown could be. I've been in sort of I just call it a mood, this last probably 24 hours, and anyway. But it's just this is going to you've changed my life, believe it or not. I mean, this is interesting.
Well, that's the problem that I was saying with this little pictogram of the 11 characteristics of females. I'm like, unless you know what an actual meltdown looks like and know how to define it, these things aren't helpful. They go meltdown, shutdown. So I'm like, if I'm not headbanging and I'm not, lying comatose, then I'm not having that. These are all the things that made me think that no, what do you mean I'm autistic? But of course we see as we begin to trace back, when I get pushed too far, and my son knew that day, like he had said to his brother, like, don't say that to mom because she's not going to take it well. And I said, wow, how did he know that about me? And so he wasn't surprised at all that there was a fire in the backyard and 30 bags thrown out, and I'm crying and doing all these things. So where I was quite shocked that he would know, and he said he could see my whole face change, and I started stimming, and I had no idea that was going on.
One just brings to mind here. My father was so strict that I suppressed everything. And yep. I am just, I'm wondering what kind of a little hellion I would have been if I hadn't had that in my life, but it's to the bad point. I just as an aside, I'll tell you how bad I was restricting. I had an upper GI done when I was about 20. The doctor had the insight to say, I want you to go get your stomach checked. And they did a barium swallow and an x-ray. And I went back for the results, and I was 20 years old. He said, well, there's two things. There's two things sort of funny. He said, the results show that you have about 11 years of scarring from ulcers.
Oh!
And that's how much I was suppressing. And of course, I had my little mini breakdown over the next year. Matter of fact, that was the first time I had attempted suicide. But the funny thing about this is he said, whatever it is you're worrying about, you need to stop. So it's like, wow. I remember thinking, thanks, Doc. Okay, you just solved it. So, yeah. Oh, man.
Well, the thing that one of the therapies that I'm training in currently, and there's a very interesting article, I'll send it to you in the Globe and Mail, but just talking about, we've now definitely shown that with alexithymia, what happens is the nerves, the motor and sensory nerves, still get activated, and so the knee pain it is called psychosomatic, but it's not psychosomatic in the way people used to think that it's an imaginary knee pain. There actually is the knee pain. There's the ulcers, these different things, because we grow up in environments that we're not allowed to. Certainly, I did, and you did as well. Express ourselves at all. Emotionally, feelings were absolutely unacceptable for me. And it's it's really, that's one of the big things about, I guess, since we've been together, is that, oh my God, ow, sorry, that's just my usual autistic thing, begging myself in some way. But what was I saying now? I'm completely, my foot paralyzed. Hollis, what was I saying?
It was talking about knee pain, and then the.
Yeah. So the knee pain really is knee pain. It's like it really becomes inflamed, and there really is an organic tissue alteration, like these ulcers and stuff. Like the body really gets, really does keep the score of all of this stuff. Like, and I was talking yesterday to my friend, and just about saying, because I was upset last night about, it's usually about my family from the past and the abuse. I usually get into a cycle on that when I'm having a meltdown is what it goes. And, it's like my friend was saying, well, you just need to, you have to forgive. And, so I said, well, how? Like, how do you do that, right? Because the problem is, I'd like to be able to just do that, but I also know that you can't just make a decision on that because it will be stored in the body, and the body will show symptoms, and then you're going to get sick from that. So it's a conundrum of how do I find a way to let this go without it being suppressed. And in terms of your question about, I have the same question in terms of, maybe it was good that it was so strict and things like that because these are the good things that came from this. But my son's amazing, and he's an ethical person, and he's kind, and he's good, and he's emotionally aware. And I've often found out a lot about emotions from him in terms of how does he process anger and stuff like that. And the truth is, you don't need to be abused to be a good person.
Right.
And to, you know, there. I always say to people, you know, we try to find, I think, some sort of benefit in the abuse that we went through. And I don't think, like I say to patients, there is nothing.
Right.
There's nothing beneficial about it. But what you're going to do with it now, that's what because people will say, like, oh, you know, it's good that I was abused. I'm like, no, it's never good that you're abused. But how you alter that and grow as a human being, you know, like, don't give the abuser credit for you know, who you are.
But also it stays with you, like your father's very strict with you, and then you create this inner voice which is always strict with yourself. Like you have
Yes. Oh, bad.
Yeah.
Yes, really bad time on that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was. Go ahead.
That's something that I said to Martin. This is the first day I woke up and didn't beat myself up, and because Martin's always like, Martin never judges me with the meltdown, and I usually am like a lot of times afterwards I lie in bed for half a day and say I'm depressed, I've been such a bad person, and feel very horrible, and you would be like, you know, it's a new day, or you just never judgmental. And so this morning when I woke up, something had definitely changed my brain. I said, I don't need to beat myself up. You're not going to be disappointed in me, and today's a new day. And so actually something has rewired, you know?
Yeah. Wow. I envy you two. I really do, because I really think that's a relationship like that would be wonders in my life at this point in my life, especially for someone else that was neurotypical. This may be sort of a tangent, or at least a off subject a little bit, but two things. As I'm going through this process, you know, here we're talking about all this suppressed real energy and emotion and everything that we've got, and I feel like I'm taking the bottle off the top, the letting the genie out of the bottle here, and I'm almost afraid of what that genie is going to be, because, you know, there's
that genie is awesome. Okay, they're astounding.
I know. It's how to let that genie out. I mean, I can yell at my cat. I mean, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't. It's like, what, you know. It's like, it's not much different of externalizing it when you're alone, and then keeping it internal.
Well, that's what groups for, Thomas. That's why, like, you see people on there talking about their date sucked, or that their pancakes worked out, or
yeah.
That's what the group is there for.
But you know,
right?
I'm afraid there's a side of me that's a real asshole. There's a side of me that's a real, you know what I mean? There's parts of me I don't. That maybe that's that voice, you know, that we've brought, you know, when you've grown up, that strict voice. But there's it's really, really hard for me to try to let that out, and I think I need to. And I'm one of these days it's going to, and I pity the person on the other side of it. But, you know, I mean, I don't know. This is part of that sort of that bittersweetness, you know.
It's very important actually to be able to be in touch with your feelings and to be able to let them out. That's why having a group is so important, and you know, we really do connect and try to support each other. And Martin says I would sort of gather people, and you know, then I see them becoming more comfortable with who they are. One of the things about any of us that have been abused is we all, and it was one of the things. I had somebody who once came into my office pretending they had PTSD, and I just knew right away, because it's all these things, right? Like, we all identify with the abuser. We all think I have this horrible part inside of me, because of course the abuser was in power, and so a way to cope as a child is I've got this horrible thing inside of me that makes me feel powerful. Like, it's all unconscious, but you know, you'll figure out at the end of the day, it's not that thing you think is horrible. It really isn't. But we are really fundamentally kind and good people.
The problem is that you depend on your parents, and so you can't say that your parents are bad, because I mean, then you have nothing to depend on. So you tend to tell yourself that you are bad or you are the problem.
And most of us seem to have a parent that's narcissistic, either got narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder with the narcissistic overlay. And because there seems to be something about them, I'm thinking, that might turn on our gene, right? Like, something turns on our genes. But again, it's been very hard for us to find anybody who hasn't got a parent that's absolutely atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we all learn how awful we are.
Yeah.
And that we're not.
No, and this is so the Jekyll and Hyde, or the schizophrenic part of me, is that there's a part of me that I really almost like there was two parallel people going on. There was a part that I swear somehow knew that I was different in a major way because I kept searching for it. And then there was the neurodiverse or the neurotypical part that was sort of the shield or the defense or the coping mechanism. And it's weird now because I'm willfully dropping or trying to drop that whole defense system in order to become my real self. And that's an interesting experience. That really is. I mean, I have that fascination you do, Natalie, as far as like, this is cool. But then there's the emotional side that's like, oh, I don't know if enough cool for the day, enough cool, you know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I work with a patient, for example, and we're just working with a single memory and looking for anger. A patient in an hour can use over 150 defenses. And that's with somebody there pointing it out. So, you know, it's tough. And we have those defenses there in order to survive.
Yeah.
And what I, for example, is that, you know, we're just not fragmented. Like, I look at borderline personality disorder or narcissistic, like, you've actually broken that person's personality and altered them in such a fundamental way that it's very, very hard, if it's even possible to alter that. Where with us, you know, we just put on armor and you're walking around with that, and then you take it off, and it's kind of like taking off a tight pair of shoes. You know, it's a relief, but also, you know, it's some reason you believe you need them, right? It's like
you're always afraid of being rejected, and so when you really show yourself and your true self gets rejected, that will be really, really painful, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always the hesitation: to what degree can I show myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's what makes it so nice about having a group of people. That none of us do reject each other. Like, we all just kind of have this empathy about who we are, and
the issue is that you create all these coping mechanisms, and then you enter a safer environment in adulthood, hopefully anyway.
And
then you find that these coping mechanisms are really not that useful anymore. In fact, they become obstacles. But it takes some time to deprogram yourself, as it were.
Yeah, because it's like, when I said to you, why don't you come and do the interview, you were like, okay, that's kind of, you said, that's uncomfortable, you said, but then you just came, and I said, well, it will make me more comfortable, and that's something that you wouldn't have done in the past. Like, it seems like things are just more manageable. Like, we can manage more sort of variance because there are certain things that we can count on, right?
Hmm.
I said, well, we're all autistic, we're just going to all do it together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing how much we have in common. I mean, it's the face of it's different, but the heart of it's the same. And wow.
We're talking about that at some point where you talked about how we think we're all individuals, and then you find out, oh, we've got these commonalities, and
that is strange. Where your whole personality seems to be already described by someone maybe years ago. Like, it was a unique individual.
Yeah, so true. Wow.
We're doing great.
Hey, I'm telling you, we're going on an hour, believe it or not. And the only reason I want to sort of get us headed towards the cutoff point is that if people will not listen to it, if it's much more, they'll listen to it, but.
It's great. It's like, I'm really hungry. I realize as we're talking, I'm starving. So I'm like, oh yeah, that thing about eating I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
So,
well, we got to bring up your website. We didn't bring that up. Embrace ASD, one word. I just want to talk about it from my perspective, and that is, I preach people to go there a lot because it's the only place I have seen that was by a person on the spectrum with and this is both Natalie and Martin that are putting all this together, and it's where you can go, and it's written for people on the spectrum by people on the spectrum. So, but that's my point. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's embraceasd.com.
Yes, embraceasd.com. Yep, and I will actually put that up when I post this too. I'll make sure that's on YouTube as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's just really important for us in terms of having, gotten a late diagnosis and to try to really help people recognize what this looks like and to create a community.
Yes.
People can then also come onto the Facebook page and there's a group and just, we're trying to just create a situation where none of us are left feeling alone.
Yes.
Or and you're having a bad day. Somebody out there's always somebody to talk to, or from all time zones, and
Yep, exactly. I'm with you 150% on that. Okay, Natalie, go eat before you eat Martin. And,
before I melt down.
Yes, right. Martin, thank you. Natalie, thank you, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you and good day. We'll talk to you later then.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, that was a great interview with the two great people. I'm really excited about that. Can't wait to get this out for all you to watch. And remember, that was embraceasd.com. And like I say, it's if you're a person who is recently diagnosed or just on the spectrum, the information, because Natalie is hyper-focuses, that's her thing. She likes to research. And she was just talking about that even before she was, I guess, professionally into research like this. She was researching. And so that if there's something really cool and relevant, it's going to be up there on her site. She's going to put that up there. Martin will put it up there. I think he does the site work. So make darn sure you go see that. And what Natalie and Martin were just saying about community is so important. And there's a growing, I think this is an organic thing that's happening worldwide, and that is our community is pulling together. We need each other. We're at an age where we need to know ourselves. We need to share our stories so that we know ourselves, just like this interview, knowing what meltdowns were. I mean, to validate who we are and to understand ourselves is so important to our well-being and our mental health and everything. And once we get ourselves functional and once we can contribute our gifts to this world, there's going to be a lot less sorrow in the word autism or being autistic. And that's what we're going for. And to all of you out there in the neurotypical and neurodiverse, we're at an interesting time. And so thank you for joining me. This is, I'll have to put it up on the screen. This is Discovering Autism. I need a sign in front of me so I can just look up. This is Discovering Autism. Okay, ramble. Thank you all. We'll talk to you later.